Black Lives Matter movement has demanded that a number of cases be reopened. These included the cases of Kenneka Jenkins and Kendrick Johnson. I'd already planned to cover the case of Kenneka Jenkins, which I did last week, but in light of the protests, I decided to do a minisode on the mysterious death of Kendrick Johnson. On the 11th of January 2013, Kendrick's body was found inside a rolled-up mat in the gym of his high school. 3 autopsies were conducted, which threw up a lot more questions than answers, but the investigation was concluded and his case was eventually closed. Hello, and welcome to the Students' Verdict podcast. This is our first ever minisode. Thank you so much for joining me this week. For those of you who are new, welcome, make yourselves comfortable. My name is Emily and I'm your host. Please follow the podcast on Instagram at the Student Verdict blog and on Twitter at Student Verdict. As always, resources will be linked in the show notes. If you enjoy this minisode, please rate and review. If you don't enjoy it, then never mind. With that, let's stop the chit-chat and get on with it. Kendrick Johnson was born on the 10th of October 1995 to parents Jacqueline and Kenneth Johnson. Kendrick was described by his family and friends as a sweet and quiet boy. He was very athletic, participating in 3 sports with dreams of eventually becoming a professional football player. Kendrick lived with his parents in Valdosta, Georgia, and attended Lowndes High School. On the 11th of January 2013, Kendrick's body was discovered inside a vertical rolled-up tumbling gym mat in the gymnasium of his high school. A preliminary investigation and autopsy concluded that he died of positional asphyxia, and the manner of his death was accidental. When Kendrick's body was found, his arm was stretched above his head and the other was down by his waist. On his feet, he was wearing only his socks. Students confirmed that they would often leave their belongings in the mats when they didn't want to pay for a locker. One student at the school said that he shared a pair of Adidas shoes with Johnson and that after gym class, Kendrick would go to the mats, jump, and toss the shoes inside of the middle of the mat. Now, the theory held by investigators then was that Kendrick had fallen headfirst into the mat while reaching for one of his sneakers and, as a result of the position he was in, was unable to then get out. It was almost a day before Kendrick's body was discovered. His body was found after some students climbed up to the top of a cluster of mats. By the time he was found, Kendrick would have been bleeding from his facial orifices as the blood would have rushed to his head. Georgia's state law dictates that the coroner be contacted immediately on the discovery of a body. But Bill Watson, Lowndes County coroner, claimed that he was not notified until 6 hours later. Watson would later express a lack of confidence in the sheriff department's handling of the case. And this is just the beginning. On the 14th of January 2013, the day after Kendrick's body was found, Lowndes County authorities said Kendrick's body showed no injuries following preliminary autopsy results, and on the 2nd of May 2013, investigators officially ruled Johnson's death as an accident. The announcement came just an hour before friends and family civil rights activists marched outside Lowndes High School, demanding justice for Kendrick Johnson. Lieutenant Stride Jones, who headed up the investigation for the Lowndes County Sheriff's Office, stated, quote, "We never had credible information that indicated this was anything other than an accident." On the 6th of June 2013, a Lowndes County judge granted the Johnson family permission to exhume their son's body for a second autopsy. And on the 14th of June, Kendrick's body was exhumed from Sunset Hills Cemetery in Valdosta. The Johnsons hired forensic pathologist William Anderson to perform the autopsy. He concluded on the 3rd of September that Kendrick had died from unexplained, apparent, non-accidental blunt force trauma, which directly contradicted the first autopsy. With that, the Johnson family wanted their son's death to be investigated as a homicide. On the 30th of October 2013, a judge ordered the release of surveillance video and other documents, and in November 2013, 290 hours of surveillance tape from 35 cameras that covered the gym area was released. A forensic analyst found that the tapes appeared to be missing a total of 2 hours and 15 minutes of footage. It was later determined that some lapses in coverage were because the camera systems weren't synchronized with each other, meaning that the timestamps differed by as much as 20 minutes, giving the impression of there being a gap in the footage. Other gaps were due to the motion cameras not being activated. In one such piece of surveillance footage, Kendrick can be seen walking down a school corridor towards some double doors which led to the gym. Once in the gym, a game of basketball was being played by other students, but without a timestamp, it's difficult to sort of fit it in the overall timeline. Kendrick is briefly seen on camera in the sports hall. Unfortunately, as with, I have to say, with the case of Kenneka Jenkins, the most important camera angle in Kendrick's case, the camera that points towards the mats, is blurry, and having viewed the footage myself, I can say with confidence that you would struggle to identify any individuals. Also, you cannot see the top of the mats where Kendrick was said to have climbed up. On the 7th of November, and an Albany attorney acting for the Johnson family, C.B. King Jr., said that the surveillance video raised more questions. He went on to say, quote, "The fact that this particular camera out of all of the cameras is out of focus, that it is not positioned in such a way that you get any image showing the top edge of the mat, we believe is anything but coincidence." On the 31st of October 2013, US Attorney Michael Moore said that the FBI would help find out how Kendrick had died, and on the 1-year anniversary of Kendrick's death, the FBI's investigation continued. On the 7th of February 2014, there was a significant development. Kendrick's parents accused Harrington Funeral Home of fraud and negligence. We'll be talking more about this in a bit. On the 18th of November 2014, the Johnsons issued a new appeal for information regarding their son's death. So, let's talk about the issues in Kendrick's case, the reasons why people are petitioning for his case to be reopened. As always, if there is anything in my research to counter the points raised, I will let you know. Firstly, as I mentioned earlier, Kendrick's parents accused Harrington Funeral Home of fraud and negligence. The second autopsy revealed that Kendrick Johnson had suffered hemorrhaging on the right side of his neck. This same autopsy also revealed that some of Kendrick's organs were missing, and in their place, his body had been stuffed with newspaper. That's right, newspaper. The funeral home would later claim this was common practice when they received a body without organs. The Georgia Bureau of Investigations, or GBI, stated that when the body was sent to the funeral home after the first autopsy, Johnson's organs had been put back inside the body. However, the coroner said that the organs were not sent to the funeral home because of the state of decomposition, and so were destroyed through natural process beforehand. It's therefore unclear what happened to the organs or why they disappeared, but it fueled the Johnsons' belief that their son's case was a cover-up. The Johnson family did try to sue the funeral home for mishandling their son's body, but this case was later dropped. The GBI found that the funeral home did not follow the best practice and that other material would have been more appropriate. However, the investigation cleared the funeral home of any wrongdoing, as they didn't violate any rules. Whilst we are on the topic of Kendrick's body, a few other things to point out. Firstly, the coroner Bill Watson noted how the body had been, quote, noticeably moved. He also stated that there had been no cooperation from law enforcement at the scene. Further, it was said that the black and white gym shoe that lay on the ground below Kendrick, the one he was supposedly reaching for when he got stuck, was lying on top of the pool of blood, and there was no blood on the shoe itself. The next issue is that of racism. In a while, we will be talking in more detail about the lawsuits filed by the Johnsons in their son's case. What I will say now is that the Johnsons' lawsuits implied a race-based dimension to Kendrick's death. The Johnsons maintained that the defendants in the lawsuits ignored the fact that their son had been attacked and harassed by a white student. They alleged that Kendrick was attacked on a bus trip 14 months prior to his death. It was alleged that another student had a history of provoking and attacking Johnson at school. This was seen by teachers and staff at the school who failed to protect Kendrick. Could this be a motive? One of the lawsuits filed by the Johnson family alleged that the two sons of an FBI agent were involved in Kendrick's death. A number of allegations would swirl around Brian and Brandon Bell. It was alleged that the brothers killed Kendrick after learning he had sex with one of the brothers' girlfriends. In the lawsuit itself, it was alleged that Rick Bell, Brian and Brandon's father, ordered his two sons and a classmate to attack Kendrick. The family believed that both brothers, one of whom was on the wrestling team, were on campus when Kendrick was last seen alive. However, the Lowndes County Sheriff's Department stated that 25 students, including one of the brothers, were already on a bus heading to Macon on the 10th of January 2013 at 1:09 p.m., the time when Johnson was last seen on school surveillance. It said that the other brother was at another part of the school when Johnson entered the gym. It should be noted that the Johnson family believed that the bus to Macon didn't depart until 4 p.m., several hours after Johnson was last seen alive. As part of its inquiry, the Sheriff's Department supposedly spoke to William White, the bus driver. He said that he couldn't begin to recall that particular January day. However, the Sheriff's Department said that when they spoke to the same driver on November 18th, he recalled that the bus left at approximately 12:30 p.m. The driver also confirmed that Brian Bell was on the bus. He knew this because he was one of the better wrestlers on the team. Officers also interviewed Spencer Graybeal, the school's wrestling coach, who explained that the wrestlers were excused from classes on the 10th of January 2013, starting at 11:32 a.m., and were instructed to eat lunch. He estimated that the bus left between 11:50 and 12:30 p.m. Graybeal later provided police with a copy of a weigh-in report indicating that Brian Bell weighed in at the tournament, although the time of the weigh-in was not noted down. In an interview which I've linked in the show notes, both Brian and Brandon Bell denied any involvement in Kendrick Johnson's death. Now, the boys had been extremely reluctant to speak to any media, so if you get a chance, do give this interview a watch. Brian told interviewers that Kendrick was, quote, one of my good friends, but accepts that he and Kendrick both got into a fight, but stated he couldn't recall what the fight was about. This had taken place approximately a year before. Both brothers denied seeing Kendrick at all on the day of his death. Brandon Bell told interviewers that he had been praying that the Johnsons got justice and the truth, and he wanted people to know that he and his brother were innocent. It suggested that Brian Bell actually lost a university scholarship because of the allegations that surrounded him and his family. The Bells filed a $5 million lawsuit against Ebony magazine, who published a series